Hello, hello, and welcome to Decaf, a production by the Beacon Center of Tennessee. Taylor and Mark back with you. We missed all of our adoring fans. Mark, you have been on a worldwide jet setting adventure. I have been planning a wedding that will be taking place 16 days from today. This is my last podcast as Taylor Dawson. The next time I'm on Decaf, I will be Taylor Justice, which is
Hopefully.
okay, don't put that in my head. I had a dream the other night, the most psychotic dream. I had this dream that we were getting married in this like dueling pianos bar that was like this really tall building in downtown Nashville. And I couldn't find Blake anywhere. There were so many things. My dress was all wrong, whatever. I couldn't find Blake anywhere after the ceremony. I went up to the rooftop and he's playing the piano. My man ain't got no musical talent at all whatsoever. I mean, he can dance, but he can't sing, he can't play. It's not his thing. He was upstairs playing the piano with some like really good pianist. Anyway, I've just had the weirdest wedding related dreams. So don't put anything else in my head, Mark. I'm going to not be able to sleep between now and the 22nd.
Do you know what's weird about weddings? Like when you grow up, you watch all these movies and you feel like people object way more than they do. And like, that's not even part of most ceremonies. Like they don't actually allow you to object. Like, I don't think I've ever been to a wedding. They said, do you have any objections? But every single romantic comedy has a place where you object. And that was like such a weird moment for me to be like, that doesn't happen at pretty much any weddings. I don't know if it happens at any weddings. Like it feels like that was something that happened years ago and they just leave it in for like, I guess for movies to be more interesting.
Yeah, I think I've maybe seen one wedding where they like opened it up for that and like everyone just kind of giggled. But like I would hate my friends if I got, and my family, if I got all the way to standing up there, spent all this money on this wedding and this dress and hair and all that stuff, and then you say no. Like I would be pissed. Like go ahead and say it at the outset, not at the right then. That's ridiculous.
Plus, maybe your friends are better than mine, but I have friends who would definitely object because they thought it was funny. Like, which is not like, they'd be like, oh, that's a hilarious thing to do. Oh, I have like 4 friends who would do that.
Yeah, so it's a good thing that you did not, one, get married in front of your friends.
I didn't invite anybody,
I was going to say, it's probably for the best that you didn't do that. I actually had a friend who, in a lot of like traditional, usually Catholic or Episcopalian weddings, they'll have a moment where the bride and groom kneels to pray. And I had a friend who refused to do that part because she was convinced that the groomsmen were going to put something embarrassing like ugly words on tape on the bottom of her husband's shoes and he wasn't going to notice and kneel and it would be like ugly words facing the crowd. She was like, we're not going to do that because I don't need to have any room for disaster. And I was like, that says a lot about your husband's friends and maybe he needs new friends. I don't know.
Maybe you shouldn't marry him is really the takeaway from that.
Maybe intervene and give him new friends in your marriage. That's what needs to happen there. But yeah, I've been having crazy wedding time, crazy wedding planning, but all that to say, the next time you see me, I will have an additional ring and a new last name. And, I've already got the pets living in the house and it's been a crazy time, but it's been really fun and I'm really excited and we're going to party and get down and boogie. But in the meantime, there is still work to be done and hot topics to be talked about and hot takes to be voiced. So let's get to it. Number 1 on our list for today is Elon Musk and Tennessee. Listen, it's a hot take. I know a lot of people have issues with Elon. I personally think he's hilarious. The internet's best troll who like literally bought the number 1 trolling platform on the internet so that he could troll freely. Like, love that for him. But he is about to make a substantial investment in Tennessee. Mark, what's going on?
Yeah, so not only just Tennessee, but Memphis. So he's putting XAI, which is his artificial intelligence company, are going to build the world's largest supercomputer in Memphis. And they're saying it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar capital investment in the city of Memphis, which is, much needed and a really big deal for the state and the city at large. Now, we will wait to see the details. Hopefully, there is no tax dollars going there. Elon Musk has a history of taking tax dollars, so I would be surprised if there wasn't. But at this point, let's just be optimistic and hope that it's just going to be all paid for by him, who is a multi-billionaire. But either way, it is a huge deal for the city of Memphis. It's an enormous deal for, a city that in a lot of ways hasn't had many good things happen to them from the outside.
Yeah.
To get this huge investment and to be, like they said, to be recognized globally. So it's a really big deal. And I know that there's some weird connection that he has to Memphis that a lot of people don't realize. I think his brother, Elon Musk's brother, owns some place in Memphis. And it makes sense because, I think Tennessee is and Memphis is probably a pretty cheap place to do that. If you're going to do that, and Tennessee has such a great tax structure, which is something he has really been pushing. He's moved, he's moved places to Texas. He's putting his money where his mouth is, saying, I want lower tax and less regulation. And he's moving from California to states that offer that. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And just it's Memphis has, when they've been in national news, it's basically been for negative things. So it's really great to see them in the news for something positive. Like me and you both like Memphis. I know there's issues with it and there's stuff we don't like, but it's a great city overall. And it's awesome to see that they are getting that investment.
I know, I really do enjoy Memphis. I was talking to Blake about it recently and just saying, we've taken a day trip to Chattanooga to go to the aquarium. I would love to take a little day trip to Memphis and go to the little downtown and visit the shops and honestly go to IKEA, see what they got at the store for us. I know you hate it, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But I think that Memphis really is a lovely place. It's an easy drive from here. My hope and prayer, sincere hope and prayer, is that usually when we include Memphis in our pork report, is for them spending stupid money on stupid entertainment that is not great. My hope is that with all of the tax money that's inevitably going to come into Memphis from people moving there to operate this facility or just the attention that it will get, all that tax revenue doesn't go to fund another dumb television show like Bluff City Law. We
don't need the Rock part or Young Rock part 2 or Bluff City Law part 2. It has been, they really do fund the worst shows too. It's not even
the worst shows. And you and I have questionable taste to begin with. We've watched Bravo and Lifetime and Hallmark and we have questionable taste to begin with. If we're saying a show is bad, it's objectively bad, across the board. It's not good.
And the premise is bad. You can just read the premise and be that is going to be the worst show ever. Yeah. I will admit, I never watched any of Young Rock, but I watched an episode and a half of Bluff City Law, and it was horrible. But it's just these are Bluff City Law's. It's been, it's the show's been done a million times and they just put it in Memphis. So please don't spend the extra tax revenues on these TV shows that nobody watches. It's a terrible investment, and it's a worse investment when you do these awful shows that literally nobody will watch. So don't do that. And honestly, if you don't want to it'd be great if you didn't give, Elon Musk a bunch of tax dollars to come here too. Just let him open up. He's a billionaire. He'll make a lot of money on this. You don't need to give him money. So that's the Memphis government.
Just a thought. Yes. Maybe work on the roads and law enforcement and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think police would be a pretty good thing.
Yeah,
there.
we can get behind police. We can get behind that. So on to number 2. Speaking of all things money and financial, probably the number one thing that people have been talking about when it comes to the way that money was spent over the last few weeks was Trump's trial that just wrapped up and reached a verdict last week. Fun fact, when we were in New York for my best friend's wedding, we had just walked out of Central Park. We had to walk past Trump Tower to get, from where we were, we had to walk past it to get to our subway to go back downtown. And all these people were gathered around Trump Tower and we couldn't pass. And so we just kind of waited it out and we were like, what's going to happen? I kind of thought that maybe some celebrity was going to film something there. I don't know. All of a sudden, this massive motorcade, 20 cars, comes around the corner and goes to the side entrance. And we looked it up, and he had a court date the next day in New York. And Trump himself was coming to Trump Tower. And we were just sitting there kind of waiting to go to the subway. And there's all these people, protesters and fans alike. It was the loudest I've ever heard anything outside of an Alabama football game. It was truly crazy. But kind of cool that we got to witness that moment. But it's been going on for weeks and weeks. All that to say, it's been over a month since I was in New York. It's been going on for weeks and weeks. They reached a verdict. And let me tell you, never have I seen something so hotly contested on TikTok, on Instagram, on Twitter. People have got opinions. Mark, why don't you kind of give us an overview of what happened for anyone who hasn't been paying attention? And then we can talk about kind of what the implications of this are for society.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is neither of us are lawyers. So our
Correct.
legal opinions are not, that's always important to say before that. So this is just from a, perspective, but yeah, Trump was essentially found guilty of, basically falsifying business records. That was kind of the idea with the, supposed payoff of, $130,000 to Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. It's gotten a lot of reaction from a lot of people. I know that after the verdict was done, Trump raised some insane amount of money.
The
like
website
more than
broke.
Yeah, it broke. And I mean, it is crazy what he raised after that. And I think, rightfully so, people were really kind of upset about the verdict and why they even, first of all, went after him. I think the big issue that I have seen from me personally is the idea that it would be a felony. Essentially, it's hard to imagine how, and because there's a bunch of misdemeanors that the district attorney turned into a felony. I think it was 34 misdemeanors. And I don't understand how you can just turn that into a felony.
That's what is confusing to me as well. I don't understand how, I didn't think that like you could stack a bunch of things on top of each other and like all of those things made like a felony sandwich. Like I didn't.
And it's all the same thing. It's all falsifying business records. So like, it's not like there's 34 separate things. It's all essentially the same version. Cause like I read that like, if he's going to be guilty on one account, he's going to be guilty on all 34 because they were all the same thing. So I don't understand that. And I think that, rightfully so, the right is saying that, this is a very left-wing person using the government to try to hurt a presidential candidate. I think that
it was clear because didn't he run for office on like his campaign promise was I'm gonna go after him, and to me that right off the bat, like I don't care who you are and what your political views are, you hear that and you're like that feels kind of gross and not appropriate. But
especially for somebody who is a district attorney to say you're going to go after somebody who at that point you had no evidence they actually committed any crime.
I know that's really tough. That to me, like I said, I don't care who you are. That should raise a warning flag in your head. I don't know.
And the question I have is, and I guess I don't know this. So the assumption is that he actually, I think most people, not everyone, and I don't know this for a fact, but most people do think he did pay off this porn star in order to not get that out of the election. But if he did, I guess I'm still trying to figure out why it's actually a crime, because they signed a non-disclosure agreement and he said, I agree that this, like, I'm paying you off this. And she said, okay, I signed this. And I guess the issue was that they said it was under legal services was what they put the money for. But I think Megyn Kelly had a good point. It's like, well, they don't have paying off a porn star as one of the drop-down menus on like QuickBooks. And the idea is that I know it's incredible, but it's like he did really give his money to a lawyer, and like I guess I don't know that it's not legal services, because again, the payoff was, from what I understand, not illegal at all. There's nothing illegal about it. She signed, he didn't do anything illegal. He was trying to, if everything they say is true, to cover up an affair. And he gave her money to do that, and she signed a non-disclosure. It wasn't like it was any kind of criminal offense. So,
which, like, let me just go ahead and say, it's objectively icky. Like, there's a lot in here that's objectively icky.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't endorse it, period. But it is confusing why it would be, because I kind of made a joke. Like, I make embarrassing moments all the time. Like, I'm always embarrassing myself. And I was like, Agreed. If I had Trump level money, I would pay people to not tell my embarrassing moments, because my friends love to bring up times that I like trip and skin my chin on the ground and like stuff like my friends love to bring stuff like that up. I would tell them, like, here's a Benjamin, don't talk about that. Like, I don't know. I mean, it's all so confusing. And I know this was on a much larger scale, but it's
it's a little bit different than skinning your And I think, I mean, that's the point that I think that we have to make, is like, there's a huge difference between morality and legality. I mean, that's a big deal. And like, I think there's a lot of things that Trump has done in his life and things that he's called people that, in my opinion, like, wow, I don't like that. I think that's immoral. I don't think in a lot of times, I don't think he's a good person. But that's a huge difference between being legal. I think there's a lot of people that have been on the fence, some, maybe never Trump Republicans or kind of middle of the road people who really don't care for him at all, that have this type of verdict might have the opposite effect of what they were hoping, and where they're like, well, I don't like this person, but, I don't like what they've done to him. So it's an interesting topic. And, I think we'll see what happens. And again, I want to be clear, I'm not a lawyer, but from the outside of somebody who doesn't quite, and I don't think the jurors necessarily did anything wrong. I don't know what all the things they were presented and what they were, but it was the fact the case was even brought, because I think in most cases this would be maybe a slap on the wrist, if anything, maybe a fine. And it's clearly because he's running for president that they've done this.
Well, I also think you just made another really good point. You and I are people who our living is kind of digesting information and synthesizing information about what's going on in current events, what's going on in the state and in the country and in the world. And we don't really understand. And that to me is alarming in itself, that there are all of these powers that be that do all of these things that normal people who don't spend all day reading stuff, people who work in retail, or people like our spouses that work in just in office jobs and HR jobs, like they're not spending their whole day reading this, so they probably don't know what's going on. We spend our whole day reading stuff like this, and we're confused about what's going on. And yet these powers that be are just going and doing all of this stuff and not explaining it to the public and not educating the public. And then you try to turn on the news and you're like, okay, well, I can't get an objective answer on this because you got MSNBC, CNN saying one thing, you got Fox News, Newsmax saying another. I actually genuinely don't know what's going on. And no one who is in office, no one who has been entrusted by the people to represent us, to know what's going on, is explaining anything to just the regular average citizen so that we can understand and form opinions. It's just the way that things are going right now, the whole everything being veiled and or overcomplicated or over everyone's heads, and they're like, shh, don't worry about it, we'll just handle all this for you. That to me is scary in itself. The fact that people don't understand what's going on just in general, especially in something like this.
Yeah, and I think that we talk a lot, and we always talk about the hypocrisy of things. It's so interesting how you have the right basically saying this is a fraud court. You say it's a banana republic, and the left saying, oh, you need to respect the rule of law. These people have said it's like these are the same people who tweet about this, how the Supreme Court's illegitimate because they didn't like their answer on something. And then on the right, you're like, well, that's the law of the land, Supreme Court, everything. Like, it's just, you see the hypocrisy in both things, and it's just saying convicted felon and saying, oh, well, I won't vote for convicted felon. It's like, that's, you don't have to vote for him. You can vote for whoever you want. I don't care.
Right.
But it's kind of a lazy argument because, ultimately, and not only that, cases get overturned. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to this. And I don't know, again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if he did anything illegal because I'm not a lawyer to say that. I do know that being a felony seems, way out of what people think. And then the question is, does he get jail time? Because the judge is clearly, at least personally, left leaning himself. Now, it doesn't mean he can't be fair with the judgment, but he clearly has a left lean based on what he's donated to for. And based on his previous cases, everyone's assuming that Trump will not get jail time, but you never know. I assumed I thought it was going to be a hung jury, to be honest. Now, I didn't watch all this stuff, so I'll give you that, but I thought it was going to be a hung jury.
It was really fascinating to me how this kind of all shook out in the end. I don't know. I mean, and then there was the whole question of, well, if you're doing it in New York City, how do you get an unbiased jury? This is a really high profile thing. And I think about that with a lot of cases too. Like even with the Alec Murdaugh case, the Murdaugh murders, they did it in his hometown. And it's like, well, all of these people knew Maggie and Paul. So like, how do you get, and that, it is problematic in itself. Like that would scare me. And so I don't know. I mean, I trust our justice system. I do think that for the most part, people are there with good intentions to do the right thing, but there are slip ups and kind of L's that people have to take sometimes when you have a high profile case like this. But regardless of all of that, I think it sets a really, to me, and I know we've heard people all over the internet say this a million times, a dangerous precedent for someone running on, I'm going to go after this person, and then they get elected and they go after them. And, does that mean you have to make up a case in order to keep your position? Because we tend to see that once people are in power, they're not keen to give it up. And so they'll do whatever they can to keep those campaign promises. I don't know. These are the things that it's like that. If you give a mouse a cookie, I just keep pulling the thread, and it results in more and more disturbing thoughts when we think about it. And it has absolutely, in my mind, nothing to do with whether Trump is guilty or innocent. It has to do with kind of the beginning of where the thread started to come loose and you start pulling it.
And I think your point is good. It's like, it's not just people who are politicians. I feel like I've heard people say this, I don't know where they're at politically, but like I'm scared to do business in New York. I need to divest from New York, because if they're going after business people for this, this basically what I think other people would say, if it was a crime, it was, a minor crime. It would be a misdemeanor crime, and putting a felony on that, because, Alvin Bragg can kind of the DA can kind of do what he wants with how he charges it. That's scary for business people, because they're saying, well, what if I'm what if I'm donating to somebody you don't agree with? And I think you have that in other states too, where you might have that in red states, where people that are blue are worried about that. So it's a sad time. And I think no matter where you stand on it, nobody thinks it's a sad time. I don't think, even if you think he is guilty of these felonies, all these things, that you should be celebrating. It's not a good day for our country either way, but it'll be interesting. We will be asking on our next poll how people in Tennessee feel about it, whether they think it was the right verdict, and whether he in terms of a felony, and whether they think that he should have, whether we think is politically motivated or not.
And Mark, when does that next poll drop?
It drops on July 10th is our goal right now.
10th.
It'll definitely be, and we're very excited for that. So it'll be exciting. And obviously Tennessee has a pretty clear right lean, so I expect it will probably be better for Trump than it would be nationally, but it'll just be interesting to see where it is.
Shout out to Mark for waiting to release a poll until after my wedding, so that I can actually focus on it and not be tied between, trying to think between seating charts and poll release materials.
It was based on that because of your wedding. Otherwise, it would have been right before July 4th. So we did move it a little bit.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So Mark, it is your most wonderful time of the year. It is NBA final season. And listen,
it's not my most wonderful time of the year, unless the Jazz are. I don't really even care that much.
Oh, okay.
The NCAA tournament is my most wonderful time of the year.
That is your most wonderful time of the year. Yeah. Well, fun fact, which I've said on this podcast a million times, I don't watch basketball. Never. I barely watch it. I watch March Madness, while I'm washing dishes, but I do tend to really enjoy the last final series of the NBA Finals. I don't know what it is about it. It just kind of feels like people in America just really kind of, it's like with March Madness too. People are really interested in those last, 7 games?
Best of 7, yep.
Best of 7. People are really interested in it. I actually remember one time being at the beach, and it was just me and my mom, and we got in her king size bed on the last, I think the Miami Heat was playing, maybe, when they had that era where everyone went to the Heat and they won. And I remember laying in my mom's bed and eating ice cream and watching that last game. And it really is fun. And I love to see people get to celebrate. But Mark, I want to know from you who your money is on. If there is a team that you absolutely don't want to win, because I have no dog in this fight, and I'm happy to adopt whoever we as a family are cheering for.
Yeah, so I actually don't have any bets on it. All the teams that I had bet on, the Mavericks beat on their way to the finals, and I don't really care for either team, so I don't really like either team that much.
So we hope everyone loses.
Yeah, America really hates the Celtics for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't love them, but people hate them. And everyone's cheering for the Mavericks. But honestly, I think I'm pulling for the Celtics a little bit, because Luka Doncic, who's one of the top 3 players in the NBA, is the most annoying player in the world. He complains about every call. He flops every single time anybody touches him. So just because I don't like him personally, even though he's so good, I guess I'm cheering for the Celtics. I have some bets on individuals that have over certain amounts of points and things like that. But it'll be an interesting series, and it's very evenly matched, which is a fun series. Sometimes you have this team where the Heat last year.
That was my next question.
Yeah, the Heat last year made the finals, and they were an 8 seed. No one knows how they got there, and they just got dismantled, and everyone knew they were going to get dismantled. So it's good. It'll be a close series. I'm interested. Yeah, like I said, I don't really care about either team much, but it should be a good competitive series. Both teams have played really well. I'm going to go with the Celtics in 6, who they are the favorites. But we'll see what happens. I'm excited for it. And it's funny because everyone's talking about the finals. These are 2 teams that outside of Boston and Dallas, people don't really have that many feelings about. And it's kind of interesting that with all this going on, the WNBA has maybe even overtaken them in terms of the press, with all the people who are basically checking Caitlin Clark and really trying to bring her down as a person.
I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of it. I know that there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are probably like, why does Taylor spend so much time on TikTok? I enjoy it. I like to look at TikToks. I like to read my books on my Kindle, and I like to look at TikToks. Okay. It just is what it is. But I get a lot of more human interest kind of stories. I follow a lot of news reporters. I follow a lot of sports accounts. I follow a lot of credible things on TikTok, not just influencers, but people are really talking about this Caitlin Clark thing. And there are a lot of creators on TikTok that are tearing her down just because of what she looks like. And that to me is not cool. And then you saw the other night, I think it was one of Angel Reese's teammates just
Yeah.
absolutely slugged her during a game. And it was shocking to see. Like, I just need everyone to realize, like, can we all just acknowledge that a rising tide raises all ships? And Caitlin Clark has made a name for herself. Doesn't matter how. Doesn't matter if it's how she looks, how she plays, where she went to school. I don't care. She's made a name for herself. She's got all these brand deals, and people are finally paying attention to the WNBA. So why are we trying to tear her down? Y'all know I'm a girl power girly. I'll be a girl power girly my entire life. Seeing her be able to be the face and a spokesperson for an organization that everyone always complains is underappreciated, underpaid, undervalued, underwatched, whatever. It's been underwatched and underappreciated for so long. And now you've got a golden girl who's getting all this attention on it, and you're trying to tear her down. Like, do y'all want a payday or not? Like, I'm so confused. It obviously makes me really, really mad.
Yeah, and I think and they got private jets where they used to have to fly commercial because of her entrance in the league, and it's really disappointing because it's like that Kennedy Chandler cheap. It was a cheap shot. It wasn't like a hard foul.
No, it was
like
horrible.
She body checked her before she got the ball. It wasn't it because there's hard fouls in basketball and that's okay. It was intentionally to try to hurt her.
No, they were just standing shoulder to shoulder, and she just came up and just whacked her. I've never seen anything like it.
And it's disappointing
that girl behavior.
Angel Reese stood up and was clapping. It was really a tough thing to watch. And some of the comments people have made. Now, the one thing I'll say is if you're a WNBA player, it's great this all is happening. But in their mind, they're like, why is this person getting so much more press than me when I'm better than her? Because, she was a great college player, but she's not even a top. Yeah, she's not even a top, at this point. She's a rookie and things happen. But, right now, she's not even a top, 30 WNBA player probably. So I think from their mind, it's frustrating to be like, she's getting all this press, all this money, and I'm a better player than her. Yeah, maybe I was better in college, but I'm so much better than her right now. And it's infuriating for the press to just keep covering her while I don't get much. And I'm not saying I agree with the way they're acting because they're acting like petty children.
And I knew you wouldn't, but the way I would counter that is to say jealousy is a perfectly normal human emotion. I deal with jealousy all the time. I think it's just who we are as humans, especially as women. I hate to say that, but especially as women. However, zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The WNBA has been notoriously underfunded. It's not funded
not underfunded. It's been overfunded because nobody watches it. Just not much money.
Not much money. So in comparison with the NBA,
yes,
way far under. Yeah. And now you've got someone who, so she's not as good as you. So go beat her and make a name for yourself. But let her keep bringing money and viewers into your organization so that you can keep playing the sport that you love. I have so much compassion for jealousy because it is so hard when you get in a jealous loop and you want the attention. I get it. I deal with it all the time. However, let's zoom out. Because this little girl is bringing all this attention to your sport, you're probably going to keep getting to play it for longer, and you're going to get a lot of perks that she's enjoying. She is bringing you all of her perks and saying, I'm here. Why doesn't everyone enjoy it with me? And so, it's disheartening to see. And I'm like, these sweet girls, that they need to start acting sweet because they're really not, and realizing and having a heart of gratitude instead of a heart of jealousy, which I do realize is easier said than done. But I hope that there's some evolving that happens there.
I mean, you're right. It clearly is all jealousy, and I agree with everything you said. I mean, it's good. It's going to bring them, more money. And honestly, they can go if everyone's watching Caitlin Clark play. I saw her attendance is twice as high when she's playing. Go outplay her, and people are gonna be like, "Oh wow, this girl's even better than Caitlin Clark." So I agree, and I mean, and I don't. I think we also you don't want to cast the whole stone. You don't want to say the whole WNBA because it's just it's probably 10 to 15 players who have. And I mean, I don't really care when people are talking. Some people are like, "Oh, she's not ready for the WNBA. Or she's not gonna be good enough." Fine, you can say whatever you want about that. When you're actually checking her for no reason, there's no purpose.
That was insane.
It is. I agree with you, and I think that the WNBA players need to understand at least the some, because again, it's not the whole league. Some people are probably super happy, especially these people who don't get much time. Are oh, I'm so happy that people are paying attention to our league that have never paid attention before.
Totally.
It's being talked about on at ESPN, and these are things that you never had 3 years ago. So it's hopefully the quality competition is good, and I understand why you'd want to beat her and be like, I'm going to go and beat her in this game, but you
Well,
don't need to
beat her,
beat
but
her
do
up
it
physically.
fairly. But don't,
Yeah, yeah,
don't
yeah,
beat her up. Like,
yeah.
beat her in the game, but don't beat her up. And then go on your little private plane and enjoy your ride home and watch Netflix. Like,
And they're going to they're going to lose people from what you said. If people view them like, oh,
oh,
these
I
are
know.
mean girls who are actually trying to hurt, like people who are watching, I'd be like, you know what? I'm not watching. I don't want to watch this girl like get beat up by these basically, bullies.
If I want to watch petty girl drama, I'm gonna turn on Bravo. Like, period. I'm not gonna watch it on the WNBA. Like, that's just how I feel. So, like, petty
Yeah.
girl drama, leave it out. I'm here for sports. I'm here to watch someone that I admire who is drawing attention to women's sports. And if you're gonna beat up on her, then I'm out. Like, I can't watch that. I can't stomach it. It makes me upset.
Yep.
Last thing we're
Agreed.
going to talk about today, but we would love to hear everyone else's thoughts on that. Last thing we're going to talk about today is something that has been absolutely popping off in a group text that I have with Justin and Stephanie and Suzanne and spouses. Forbes issued an article, when was it? Earlier this week, May 2nd, about how Gen Zers, it's called Gen Zers, are asking their parents to help them find jobs, a new survey shows. A recent survey of job seekers shows that 70% of Gen Zers ask their parents to help them find a job. Then on Fox News last night, there was a story that says during job interviews, employers say recent college graduates have done these 6 things in astoundingly large numbers. 1, struggle to make eye contact, asked for unreasonable compensation, dressed inappropriately, don't want to know what that means, used inappropriate language, refused to turn on their camera during a virtual interview, what? And brought a parent to their interview. That is an astounding 19%. I want to say this. I want to start with this, and then I'm going to kick it over to you, Mark. I feel like millennials got a lot of heat when we were the age that Gen Zers are now. We got so much heat. However, these weren't headlines when us millennials were entering the workforce 10-ish years ago. These were not the headlines. If I had asked my mom to help me find a job, she would have said, I've got a job for you, and wheeled the lawnmower out of the garage. Okay. Like, that was not an option in my house. It was finish college with good grades, go get a job, and now get your own phone plan and pay your own rent and buy your own groceries. And I mean, I remember the hard day when I started paying for my own makeup. It was dark, but like, that was the expectation of me. And I know it's not the expectation of everyone, but that was the expectation of me as a millennial. I'm sure you had a very similar experience, Mark. The fact that we're even seeing these headlines, the fact that they're even doing a survey about bringing a parent to an interview, I would be horrified. Not turning on a camera during an interview, like, that's disrespectful. You want to make eye contact with your interviewer. Not dressing appropriately, like a bottle service girl. I'm so confused. Like, I'm just, it just is like, all of this is boggling the mind. What do you think, Mark?
First of all, let me say, I do doubt this survey a little bit. It's 800. I just cannot, in my mind, imagine that 19% of people brought their parent to an interview. I can't imagine. It doesn't sound right. It's 800 people. And it's also asking employers who could, it's not like people admitted to that. It's asking employers who may have just made stuff up. That number seems, I actually don't believe it.
Okay.
Some of this is kind of, and I would actually point, some of these are a problem, but I actually think that it's not necessarily just because it's young people. Like, the struggling with eye contact, I think that's a thing with COVID. I think people were like away from people so long.
Yes.
That's actually one of the things I've seen that people are on the same social skills because they were away in COVID. And these are, the people looking, they're probably, 18 to 22 or I guess 22-year-olds who a big part of their life was during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the dressed inappropriately one is interesting because I think that there's some old school employers who have a certain opinion of that. That could be me wearing a polo to an interview. Now, I would not do that, but it's like that would be considered dressed inappropriately for them. And I think that there's a little bit of give here where, yes, people who are younger doing these things, but I also think that there's these views that are really old school that might not fit in the workplace anymore fully, where there's a middle ground to be like, yeah, if you wore a polo, nice pants and shoes, like, is that dressed inappropriately? Some people would say yes, and I wouldn't dress that way, but I get it. So I think there's a middle ground here. The inappropriate language, I do believe that one, and that seems to be something that's there. And the unreasonable compensation too. Let's remember that's unreasonable from their perspective. It doesn't mean it's actually unreasonable.
True. But I do feel like it is like incumbent upon the, like, it's the job of the interviewee to look up what a range for their position would be. I mean, I've seen people go into interviews before and ask for an unreal amount of
Yeah.
money, and when you're told like that's not even close to what we offer for this position, then they snub their nose and walk away rather than just saying like, oh, okay, well, I need a job, so like I'll take it and work my way up.
I do believe there's issues. Like I do think that's right. That there is serious issues there, but I think that this is maybe a more slanted article to try to get like clicks than it actually is if you look at it. Because really all the ones that I see, it's like an unreasonable compensation. Like also, everyone has different, that's such a subjective term where if you're like, oh, it pays 40 to 50 and you ask for 60, like that's not an unreasonable ask. They might say it is and they might pay you 50, and you might accept it. But like, I just, some of these are tough and a lot of these are, I mean, every single one of these, right, except for the last two, are subjective.
That's true.
So like that's what that person's view of it was. It's not like that is not a fact. So
Sure.
I do believe that there's issues, and I think that COVID has had a huge part of that. But I also think people are just more. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but people are more entitled these days. They think that $100,000 is what I need, like what I deserve because I got out of college, and that's what people make. Like there's this entitled aspect.
You're 22.
Too. I know.
Calm down.
I know. Yeah, I made.
Like,
I made like $22,000 and was ecstatic to make $22,000.
I was like, I have money. Like,
I know.
Truly, it was a dark. I think about that now. I'm like, how did I live? And it was on baked potatoes and ramen. But like, it was so I
paid back $100,000 in college loans while making $22,000 a year, and still was able to like do like and we had to figure out a way to do it. So I think that there's a few things that are true here. Where one, yes, I do absolutely believe that people are doing these things and are not ready for jobs or don't really know how to be in the workplace or do job interviews. But I also think some of this is maybe old school people who, they are putting their own subjective interpretation on what happened.
What would you do if you were interviewing someone and they didn't turn their Zoom camera on? Because I would just be like, what if they didn't just turn it on to begin with? I
mean, I think people have weird things with that. I wouldn't judge them that much. If I asked them to turn it on and they didn't, I would say, well, this interview's over. Like, if you're not going to listen to a basic thing like that, unless you have some crazy reason where you have, pink eye or something, I don't know, something gross. That's the only reason that would be said. But
so weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's unacceptable. And if a parent came to an interview, which, again, that number seems insane. That's an automatic, I would ask them to leave. I'd be like, listen, they have to stand outside. And then in my head, I'm like, the fact they even brought them there means I'm not going to hire them.
You got to go. I mean, the Forbes article says 70% of Gen Zers asked their parents to find a job, but there was 71 people report that a parent was present off camera for support during an interview. I would be so embarrassed if my mom was sitting across the table from me just on a regular Zoom call every day, much less I would feel even more nervous. Like, I don't think that it would be like a supportive thing. I would feel even more nervous. Like someone is sitting across the table watching me do this. Like that to me is jarring. But anyway, we would love to.
It just shows that people aren't adults and they haven't grown up. It's like you're a 10 or 12-year-old. Like, oh, I need my parents. Like, oh, I need to find out what to do. Like, and we all like ask our parents for advice. I still ask my parents for advice, and like I take their advice. But like, it's crazy that this would be something that people do. And I mean, I would not hire somebody who. I mean, those are out of those bottom two are deal breakers for me. I mean, really, an inappropriate language, depending on how inappropriate it was.
What is inappropriate?
They said that if they said, damn,
like a sexual comment. It's like,
I mean, that would probably be pretty inappropriate. But if you're dropping F-bombs or something in interviews, you'd be like, no, that is not acceptable.
I can't trust you to talk to people that I work with.
No, that's right.
I kind of resented it when I was given this book. I was given this book when I first started my job by someone I really, didn't get along that well with, my career back in 2015.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't talk about Beacon that way.
No. Way back a long time ago. Someone that I didn't really get along with, and he gave me this book, and I think it was like a passive aggressive kind of slight, but I read it and I really enjoyed it. And it's called The Curmudgeon's Guide to Getting Ahead by Charles Murray. It's a really short book. It's a really easy read. I still have my copy of it, but the do's and don'ts of right behavior, tough thinking, clear writing, and living a good life. And, I don't know if it's because of helicopter parents that this is happening, that have raised their children in high school during the time of COVID when everything felt dire and all this stuff. And now they have to hover in helicopter and make sure their little babies are okay. Or I don't know what it is, but I think that Gen Z needs a little more tough love, a little less being told that you deserve everything. Cause newsflash, you don't. You only deserve what you work really hard for and earn. And anyway, I would just recommend that book, The Curmudgeon's Guide, to anyone who has a 18 to 24-year-old that's trying to enter the workforce these days, or even in college as you're interviewing for internships and stuff with your professors. Like, read that book. It'll give you a good little nudge in the right direction.
Is that the same Charles Murray from like AEI?
Truly couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
Probably.
I know he's on the Southern Poverty Center's like hate group list.
Well, I don't have any
But they're
idea. I just pulled it up on Amazon, but it's a great book and it
yeah,
really
they're a
taught
joke
me a
anyway, but
lot. Yeah. It really taught me a lot about like just kind of what to expect and how you're going to get a few knocks on the chin and you just need to act right and move on and think critically and clearly. So, yeah, Zoomers, come on, get it together. Well, at least they're taking the heat off millennials and we'll take that.
Yeah, I mean, again, because that it would honestly be horrible to be a hiring manager right now, having to, like, I would hate that, having to deal with that. That would be horrible.
Yeah, I'm out on that.
Ugh.
That's all we got for you guys today. Mark, do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
Nope, I am good. It's good to see you again after about 6 weeks gone. So I hope everyone enjoyed the episode.
I know, Mark jet setting, and then now me gone for a few more weeks, but we'll be back in July as with me with a new last name. Can't stop talking about it. So excited to be a bride. Love it. Thank you for listening. If you haven't already, you should subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe on YouTube to watch us in video form. We're super thankful for our listener base. We hope you enjoyed the show. Comment below. Tell us what you think. We'll talk to you soon.